Good morning and welcome all. It's great to have such a large group of customer service leaders joining us for the webinar today. And for those of you who are not listening live, you've been lucky enough to receive a recording of the webinar. So yes, the webinar is being recorded and will be shared with all registrants. As customer service evolves to meet changing customer expectations, support teams are delivering an unforgettable experience across multiple channels. What started as social support is now a diverse team managing social messaging, crowd service, reputation management, and much more. But where should customer service departments be focusing their efforts and resources? How do our customers want to reach us? And what can we do to ensure we deliver a seamless omnichannel experience as we explore these new channels? This topic will be a key discussion at the Customer Service Summit West in San Diego on June 3rd and 4th. Check your webinar chat box for a link to more information as you listen to the webinar. But for now, I'd like to introduce our panel of speakers. Joshua March, CEO and co-founder of Conversocial, Reginald Chatman, Senior Customer Service Director for Bloom Energy, Chip Liebenow, Customer Care Director for Home Depot, and David Boll, Director of Global Services Delivery, Social Media Support at Dell. And last, but of course not least, our moderator and good friend of the Insight Group, social media thought leader and queen of Facebook, Mari Smith. I'll hand it over to Mari from here. Thank you all, and I look forward to a great discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jasmine. It's a delight and a pleasure to be here. Greetings, everybody. This is Mari Smith. I believe we're going to be starting out with a poll, and we're just going to set the scene here. We're going to open up a question to our audience here. I see a wonderful group coming in, and that is terrific. So there's going to be a poll coming up on your screen, I believe. And we want to hear from you. What are your top priorities for customer service in 2019? And you can go ahead and select one of those choices. I think we probably one or more, actually, yes. Crowd service and peer-to-peer support, public social support and reputation management, private messaging, Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, etc., synchronizing channels for seamless omni-channel support, overall improved response and resolution time. So go ahead and pop your answer in there if you would, my friends. And what we're going to do in a moment when those poll answers come up, we're going to switch over and talk to our panelists here and to also discuss what are our customer service priorities for 2019 and how does social customer care fit on that list. Excuse me. And to ask each of our panelists, where are you focusing your efforts and resources for 2019? Okay, terrific. So there we have our answers. Now this is really fascinating. Look at that, top of the list. Overall, improved response and resolution times is right out the gate, number one. Number two, synchronizing channels for seamless omni-channel support. And I can imagine that that's just more and more of a demand for major corporations. And then tied for third place, we've got crowd service and peer-to-peer support and public social support and reputation management. And now that's really fascinating to me, and to see that the last one was 12% is private messaging. Josh from Conversocial, I would love your Conversocial is one of the leading customer service management platforms and has major clients all over the world. What are your thoughts initially on these poll results, Josh?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see what people have put. Obviously, in the end, the experience to the customer is the most important thing, right? And so thinking about response rates and resolution times is definitely, I think, top of everyone's mind for the right reasons, right? Because that's what's going to make a difference, whatever channel you're on. So it makes a lot of sense. I was kind of surprised as well, like you were, to see private messaging so low on here. For us, when we look at the data of the number of messages that are being sent between businesses and consumers over private messaging channels versus public messages, public social through our own platform, and we have hundreds of clients all around the world, we've seen private messaging increase by about 900% over the last couple of years. It's been like pretty dramatic, and it's actually way bigger at this point than the number of messages that are being sent publicly. And we obviously see that being at a bit of an inflection point right now, with WhatsApp opening up, which is obviously massive in Europe and South America, with Instagram opening up business messaging this year, with Apple opening up iMessage for businesses fully this year. I know that's something Home Depot are on. So from a kind of actual volume perspective, we're definitely seeing that exploding. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if that's partly driven by pockets of early adopters and innovators who are recognizing that it's a powerful channel and are promoting it to their customers and driving huge volume. Public social and making sure you're on top of people who are complaining publicly is obviously just one of those things that everyone has to do, right? It's something that is super important, and that it can really backfire if you don't take care of it. I feel like most businesses are on top of it in some way, and probably the challenge with it today, if we look around at most brands, is everyone's doing it to some degree, but response times are probably nowhere near where they need to be, and that I think that probably reflects the focus on improving those response times, whatever the channel is.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'd love to hear from the others here. Chip, Reginald, and David, feel free to chime in, and specifically around your brand, your company's top priorities for customer service in 2019. Who would like to share?
Sure, Mari. This is David with Dell EMC. Yeah. So we're actually moving on each one of the items in the list here, but at different levels of maturity as we proceed forward. So, for example, we spent the last year working hard on the overall improved response and resolution times, and kind of our thought on how to manage through that journey is that that's key to actually moving into the other areas, because as Joshua mentioned, when we started a couple of years ago, our public support, really, we had an SLA of around an hour, right? And when you think about it, we're in the break fix business, helping people solve their technical problems. And some of those are complex, and that hour delay can be really frustrating and disruptive. So, over the last year, we've pushed that down to 30 minutes. 30 minutes as we entered the last part of last year, and are closer to about 5-minute responses now. And we believe that kind of sets the stage to move into these other areas like private messaging, which we are doing. It's real big for us in China with WeChat, and we're rolling out some initial activity on WhatsApp in various languages as well. And then also sets us up for that crowd service and peer-to-peer support, which we're just now moving into as a transformational program here at Dell EMC.
What was the very last thing you said there, David? You're just moving into?
The crowd service and peer-to-peer support. We believe that's going to be a transformational kind of program for Dell EMC for service and support moving forward.
Wow, that's huge. Peer-to-peer support. Okay, wonderful. And then I heard another voice there. Was that Chip or Reginald?
Yeah, that was Chip over here from Home Depot. It's fascinating. As I look at this, one of the big pieces here that sticks out to me is these are picking the right things to do. And where I've seen a lot of people struggle is doing the right things correctly. So we have a similar focus for 2019. We're very focused on what we call the One Home Depot initiative, which would be analogous with synchronizing channels for seamless omnichannel support. We call it the interconnected experience across the entire customer journey. But where we really try to focus a lot of our resources is we obviously start with the customer in mind as we come up with these initiatives, but we understand that the technical employment of these initiatives really lies in that associate experience. So I personally don't believe that you can have an outstanding customer experience until you get that great associate experience. So we are spending a ton of resources and effort on creating the best-in-class associate experience to really drive that strategic and cultural shift over to the one Home Depot mentality, where at some point we hope that channels essentially disappear and it is a brand experience that the customers are having. So as you think of that, it's really the synchronization of all of these priorities as we move forward, but being able to drive the right cadence so that this rolls out, keeping change management top of mind as we roll it out to our entire force of 400,000 people across the Home Depot.
Wow. That's interesting, Chip, talking about eventually channels disappear, and it's just like one grand experience. Yeah, I like how you've called synchronization the interconnected experience across the entire customer journey. That's easy to understand. I'd love to hear from Reginald at Bloom Energy.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me okay? Great. Yeah, so I think just so the audience knows here, I am the representative of the sort of the B2B or the enterprise space as opposed to consumers. So I'll be speaking from that standpoint. And of course, for us as well, just overall improved engagement with our customers, not only from the timing of it, but I have the luxury of not where time is not an issue, meaning we don't have to get back to customer within 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes. It's more about the quality of the conversations and the quality of the responses. Sometimes the responses can, not the initial response, of course, but some of the answers and the resolution can take for us 2 to 3 weeks, if not a month. And so the amount of time that we have to spend with them to resolve an issue or to take care of it, but it's really drives the experience from the standpoint of the making sure it's right, making sure it's done well, and making sure it's thorough, as opposed to making sure that it's quick. And so for that, we have different types of tools that we'll get into, or different types of processes that we have for the enterprise space that might be a little bit different than the consumer space.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, Reginald. Yeah, that makes sense. This is really just it's a very, very exciting time. It really is. Josh and I were talking in the virtual green room there before we got started. It's just the tip of the iceberg of what we're seeing here with merging the customer support with the technology, with social media, with all the channels. And so I'd like to dive into the next question here. I love this word, what some are calling the Amazonification of expectations. Customers are now demanding the personalized, real-time support of the world's biggest tech leaders. So with that in mind, what kind of support do customers expect from our social care teams, and how do you see that changing in the next 5 to 10 years? Now, that's a tall order, 5 to 10 years. Some of you might need to get your crystal balls out, but who'd like to take that one first? Just go ahead and say your name and company.
I can certainly jump in here if you like. This is Josh from Conversocial.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting time for brands, right? Because our perspective on this may be a little bit contrarian, but we think that it makes the rise of the kind of digital consumer over the past decade, the kind of the rise of Amazon that has gone with it, has really reflected that online has just become about kind of cost and convenience, right? It's just become what's the most easy and cheapest thing. And it makes sense because effort. There's a huge amount of research that shows that effort is one of the biggest determinants of customer loyalty, right, and a great customer experience. And so if you can make something completely effortless, then people love it. But while effort's important, I really think that if brands want to be more than just the cheapest and the most convenient, then which online is pretty hard to do against an Amazon, right? Then I think the brands really need to kind of go deeper with customers. I think brands need to have real relationships with customers, which I think brands used to have, right? But the kind of rise of the digital consumer, it's kind of got lost a little bit, right? And like customers have just turned into like chat sessions, heat maps, data points. They've kind of lost the kind of human connection. And I think that's part of the cause of why online everyone just goes, to the cheapest and most convenient, right? Because they've kind of lost a bit of that human connection. And I think that the rise of social, the rise of messaging, really presents a bit of a disruptive opportunity for brands to really connect with their customers, one-on-one in a meaningful way. And I think that's what's really exciting over the next, decade, is that there is this chance for brands to kind of turn this around a little bit, right? I mean, messaging is like the first digital channel where you have this continuous conversation between the brand and consumer, where you always know who you're speaking to, right? There's always a name and a face. And so you can give a level of personalization and context that just isn't possible in other channels. And I really think that's just a massive opportunity.
Yeah. On that note, Josh, just I'm curious for my own curiosity, do you think that there's an element of video chat that will be more integrated as we go forward in the coming years for customer care?
Yeah. It's a difficult one, right? It's video chat has definitely been shown. There's a huge amount of data that shows that when you have a video chat with someone, it's almost like interacting with them in person, right? It creates a much stronger emotional connection. And I've certainly seen some companies want to experiment with it. It can be difficult from an agent perspective, right? It's one thing to have someone who's on the phone nonstop all day speaking to people. But if you're saying you're going to have actual video chats with people, you've got to look great, make sure your posture's great, make sure you're smiling. It's actually a lot more pressure on an agent. And so I think it could be, while I think in theory it's great, I think in practice it could be pretty difficult to implement. I'd be interested if any of the other panelists have tried it. Yeah,
for sure. So, folks, we're on this question right now of really kind of, like I mentioned, getting our crystal ball out, looking at what kind of support customers expect with this Amazonification, this really deep level of personalization and fast response, and looking to see what we can expect from social care teams and how we see that changing, evolving in the coming years, 5 to 10 years. Who else would like to chip in on that question?
Hey, Mari, it's Chip from Home Depot. I'll jump in. One thing that I would start with, I think talking 5 to 10 years in this space is so difficult. The speed of change right now, that it's just it's difficult to think even 5 to 10 months out at this point. But
right, I know.
Yeah, the speed of change with technology and expectations, it's mind-boggling. I love what Josh said about going deeper with the customer. And I really think at the end of the day, when you strip away the technology, you strip away channels and touch points, what you're left with is a basic interaction between humans. And behind all those channels and whatnot, other than, AI and bots, it does come down to a basic person-to-person interaction. And I think as we see things continue to evolve, the expectation that comes is, as I purchase something or I interact with your brand and I need ongoing support, post-sale support, or I can only imagine the kind of support that Reginald deals with on fuel cells and Josh with selling advice, consulting. But I believe that the industry is going to see higher and higher demand for being proactive. So rather than waiting for the customer to encounter an obstacle along the journey, the company needs to start finding ways to identify those, reach out proactively. And you start thinking about the other technologies that come into play with this. I mean, the Internet of Things, RFI, all of these things certainly play into being able to proactively reach out to a customer in anticipation of any kind of obstacle, solve that for them. I'll give you an example. I was just out of town recently on an international trip with a good friend, and we ordered something odd at breakfast. The next day we came down, and at breakfast they already had the dish prepared for us. So
Wow.
that no technology is ever going to fix that. That's always going to be a basic skill. And I often go back to one of my favorite sayings is let machines do machine things and people do people things, which is where I go back to exactly what Josh said. It comes back to cultivating an outstanding relationship and trust behind the brand with the customer. And regardless of the channel or the technology, that is the basis for outstanding customer service.
Yeah, I just want to add into that. I love that. Yeah, machines do machine things, people do people things. Sometimes I say that humans don't scale, but bots can't build relationships, which is a kind of similar kind of line. I do think that in that proactive and knowing what you did yesterday, I do think there's huge room for systems, and whether that system is automation or humans or them together, to really work better to have context of the customer and to make sure that the memory of interactions and intents and desires are being stored and updated in real time. I think that today most businesses have this pretty kind of static CRM which gets updated occasionally and has the kind of major pieces of information. But as we move into this more fluid, continuous conversations that are happening between a brand and a customer, on different channels, within messaging, on their phone, sometimes with a bot, sometimes with a human, I think there's a really powerful opportunity to ensure that you're always keeping track of the latest desires, the latest information, and making sure that information is being used in every touch point, right? Whether that's a human reaching out, an offer that's going out, dealing with a service interaction. And I think that's something that's really important for everyone to get right over the next decade.
Yeah, Joshua, this is
Oh, go ahead.
David Bull, and
yes, David.
I have to say that I pretty much fall into that camp. Maybe I'm a little bit between the let humans do what humans do and machines do what machines do, because for us, we have a globally widespread organization supporting multiple different languages and supporting it from multiple different locations. And so when you think about the ability of that frontline agent who's in the conversation to pick up on the interpersonal social cues that you have when you're meeting people face to face, they don't really exist in this channel. And so that's where, and we're not doing any of the video stuff, and I don't anticipate we'll do that anytime soon. So that's where I see the technology. It can be very, very helpful, because there's also, at least for us, there's cultural differences between the customer and the representative who is providing that customer service. And so for us, we believe that, and we found that we can leverage technology. We can assess. First of all, we can predict whether we're going to have a happy or dissatisfied customer as we go through the conversation, right? And we can use those predictions to help inform the representative and actually to bring other resources to bear when that conversation is going off track, and bring that back on track so that we're actually delivering the kind of service and experience that customer expects from us. And frankly, with several hundred agents, I'm not going to be able to do that just expecting people to be people, right? It's not going to happen. So this is an important tool in the toolkit, I think, in terms of managing outcomes.
Can I just ask quickly, when you say you're predicting if a customer will be happy or not, is that like a sentiment? Is it emotion, or is it like CSAT, NPS? How do you measure that?
Yeah. So actually, this is going to be. I'll go into it in more depth when we do the summit in June. It's going to be the topic that I speak to, but it actually encompasses all of that. What we're doing is we're taking our past history with outcomes as measured by customer survey responses and customer experience survey scores, and we're mapping that into the conversations. As that conversation progresses over time, right, we have an understanding of this conversation is going to lead to either a dissatisfied or at least a not satisfied customer if we don't intervene and bring either a different person into the conversation or a different set of resources or a different type of resolution. So that's the process. And I said we've been focused on both our quality of resolution over the last year and our speed of resolution, and that's been one of the key contributors to delivering to those objectives.
Great, thank you, David. Yeah, Reginald, over at Bloom there in the B2B space, I'm curious of your crystal ball and what you might have to add to this particular topic of the future of the social care teams.
Right. So what we are focused on is really, again, as we discussed before, more about the relationship and what customers really want, at least certainly in the B2B space, is they want you to know them in advance. I'll give an example, actually going back to more of a consumer space. When I call my insurance company, they obviously recognize the phone number I'm dialing from, and then as soon as I engage with them, they're saying, hey, thank you for being a customer for X number of years, and they say, I see you have this product and that product, and I see you have this issue or potential problem or some area that they can help with, et cetera, even before I'm really getting to my bottom line question. And so in the enterprise space, we're finding that our customers want us to know them as well when we engage, when they ask us a question. They want to have complete context, the history of our products, how it's been performing in the field, what service activities we've been doing, what do we, how do we expect to improve performance in the future, things like that. They want our teams to know that in advance before they even have the conversation. And so that's where we are continuing to evolve the kinds of tool sets that we can deploy such that our customer care teams are engaging with them in a manner in which we don't have to ask them a million questions before we're able to get to the point at which we're resolving the issue that they have. And I think that's what consumers in the real world, as I call it, and in addition to the enterprise world, that they want us to know them in advance so that we can be a little bit more proactive in solving their problems.
I love that. Yeah, I love that this proactivity is kind of a theme here in this segment. Chip mentioned it from the Home Depot there about just how to be proactive, how to identify a obstacle and then reach out and actually solve that. I must say, just on a side note here, I love it when when brands are proactive simply from a surprise and delight, a customer experience standpoint. And I know that the Customer Service Summit coming up in June, that Michael Roy is coming back from the head of social care at Alaska Airlines, one of my favorite airlines. And I actually shared a wonderful story. I wrote about it in my relationship marketing book. And where I had a flight was delayed. I was flying, this was years ago, I was flying from San Diego to Seattle, and my flight was delayed several hours. And I had tweeted, I sent out a tweet, and bummer, flight's delayed. Nothing negative, but just, flight's delayed. And I forgot my iPhone charger. This is some time ago. And I could not believe it. About 40 minutes later, the manager of Alaska Airlines at San Diego Airport tracked me down at the airport and says, are you Mari Smith? We have an iPhone charger for you. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm never going to fly another airline. I just was so impressed. But I don't know. I just think that, that level of not necessarily proactive troubleshooting, problem solving, but more proactive on the end of just surprise and delight and experience. So shout out to Alaska Air. That was fun. Let's move into a topic about, a lot of buzzwords: omnichannel, seamless, effortless, and some leaders might refer to that as just like buzzwords, but really others would see them as the key to success as we explore all these different channels. But let's look at what they really mean to customer care, so social care. How can we synchronize channels? You talked about synchronicity a little bit. How can we synchronize channels to ensure we're delivering the most flawless experience possible? And if synchronizing channels isn't an option, then what strategies could leaders utilize to really meet customer needs? Who'd like to jump in first on that one? Don't be shy now.
That's funny. This is Chip.
Yes, Chip.
Yeah, this is Chip with Home Depot. I'll jump in on that one real quick, Mari. It's interesting because people talk about omnichannel all the time. I was at a conference recently, and they referred to it as the unicorn. Everybody's talking about it, but nobody's ever actually seen it yet, right? And I think it's a good point, because I'm not sure technology exists to the point where you can totally seamlessly, frictionlessly switch channels, and I don't know that it carries over from a in-store experience to an online experience to a chat to a voice. However, I do think that there is a lot that companies can be doing right now to prepare for the time when that does come, and I think that's what everybody's working towards. They're trying to stay as close to the edge of that wave as possible, so that as we move into it, like we talked about earlier, the speed of change right now is so fast that when it happens, you're going to notice the laggards quickly, and everybody else will be the ones sailing right into it. So there's so much logistical and cultural changes that have to happen for a true omnichannel experience. The elimination of silos within business partner groups, using data and information seamlessly across internally in order to cater to that customer's personalized needs. I think it's going to be great when it happens, and I think again, it'll be more obvious who was not prepared for it than who was. But yeah, I think where we are right now is technology for it doesn't truly exist, but we get closer every day. And the most important thing right now is to be preparing for that, have everything in place so that you can be one of the first ones into that arena.
Yeah. That's great.
I would just,
go ahead.
I would just add, this is Josh from Conversocial. What Chip said is absolutely correct. That kind of full omni-channel seamless experience is kind of a unicorn, right? Everyone keeps working towards it, and every year people chip away at it, and then something, a new channel comes up and it doesn't quite connect with all the others, and you're kind of back to square one a little bit, right? So while I think the technology is gradually getting closer and closer to it, it still always just seems a little bit over the horizon. But I will say that I think one of the reasons that I'm personally just so excited about the rise of messaging is that messaging does give you this like continuous conversation, right? That never ends, and that is completely device agnostic, right? A messaging conversation can go from your phone to your computer, potentially to the website of the brand if you're using something like Messenger Chat. Within that single thread, you can do customer service, but you can also have bots that are doing, transactions and sales. You can have, marketing messages going out. So, while it's within that single channel, it's a channel that kind of follows the customer wherever they are and does give you that, perfect context and continuous dialogue all times. So you get that 360 view of the customer. And I think that's pretty exciting. And I think that's one of the reasons why both consumers are really liking messaging, and also a lot of brands are increasingly, promoting it as a channel to engage with.
Yeah, no, it's extraordinary. And in a moment, we'll be sharing where attendees here can get their hands on the definitive guide to customer service in the year of social messaging, and that's a report put out by Conversocial. I think it's your 6th annual one, and I was astounded where it says there's over 4 billion consumers already using social messaging apps, and the more that businesses can really embrace that, the better for all. So it's quite astounding. On this topic of synchronizing channels, and if that's not a possibility, what else can we do to meet customer needs? David or and Reginald, would you like to chip in on that one?
This is David with Dell EMC. Yeah, one thing I think Chip and Joshua's conversation on where omnichannel is spot on. We've been investing a lot in omnichannel kind of foundational development, and we're not there yet, and we're going to be investing this year, and as we continue to move down that path. One of the one of the things that I think is nice about omnichannel, yes, it's difficult. Yes, the technology is not quite there yet. But one of the great things about omnichannel as a concept is the aspirational nature of it. And Josh touched on it a little bit there, right? But it and what Chip said, right? It does force those internal conversations about how do we break down silos? How do we think about the entire customer experience as opposed to just little segments of transactional customer experiences? So the fact that it makes those conversations occur in a productive way, that you start to set investment strategies and milestones against, right? I think that's one of the power of omnichannel, even if we haven't actually, caught sight of the horn of the unicorn yet. But and then to the question on synchronizing channels, that's a challenge that we currently have as well. And so I'll say that mostly the way we're managing that is we're actually trying to leverage our technology, right? So that when those customers get to us in social, we already have a good grasp from any public conversations that they've been engaged in, whether even if they weren't directed to us, right, from our social listening strategy. So we already had a good grasp of what their experience has been with Dell EMC up to this date, right? And we start out our engagement at a representative level with some indications of things that they need to be aware of, that they need to be concerned with, right? And then we have to switch to that whole manual process of swivel seating and checking in the CRMs if they've been involved in other channels and so on and so forth. But from that point forward, we try to take ownership of that experience and deliver to the ultimate resolution that customer is looking for, right? And try to put as much of the burden on ourselves and not on the customer of having to start all over again, re-explain everything all over again, reaffirm what prior promises were made and so on and so forth, right? So it's still way more manual than I would like. But from a social perspective, we have tools that other channels don't have. And I feel like, and I know we've been able to demonstrate that we can leverage those tools to take ownership of the experience and ultimately turn those experiences around into a good positive experience. And so that's the best answer I can give to you there.
Thank you so much, David. Yeah, it's great. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm actually going to move into the final segment here. This is great. No, I just love it. I've highlighted a few things in my own notes here, and I really enjoying this conversation. Oh, you know what I was going to do? I made myself a mental note because we're talking about synchronization, omnichannel. Josh, just super fast question for you on terms of Facebook's plans to integrate Facebook Messenger, Instagram Direct, as well as WhatsApp. Just curious on your kind of like overview thoughts on that. Obviously, your Conversocial does all the integration already, but is there anything that brands should need to know about that coming down the road?
Yeah, I don't think so. First of all, it's a couple of years away. It's a big project that they're embarking on.
Yeah.
Part of it is to ensure that all of the platforms have like end-to-end encryption. So I think that's going to be a very positive change. People have been, a lot of brands in Europe and South America have been excited about WhatsApp. We've been getting a load of our clients live on that at the moment. Really because of the end-to-end encryption, right? Facebook can't read the messages, and so I think it's going to be a big plus for a lot of brands that that's happening on all of the other platforms. And also, by combining the back ends, it should become easier, more consistent in terms of how those platforms are integrated. I don't think there's anything to worry about, and I think it should increase security and just make the platforms easier to work with from a brand perspective.
Great. Thanks for just chiming in on that, because I felt, I wanted to bring that up for the attendees here. Beautiful. Okay, now shifting gears, we're going to talk about other resources that our panelists here are sharing with their teams to ensure they are meeting these various goals that we're talking about, really staying on top, leading edge trends of the social customer care. So just talking about resources, Actually, Josh, I'm going to circle right back to you because I know that you have a fabulous report, which I've been absolutely devouring and loving. You want to talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously, we'll share the link to it. But a big part of what we try and do is just to keep track of all the trends that are happening in the industry, and each year we release a guide that has all the latest research and the latest data and best practice and case studies. So it's completely free. So definitely please go and download that and share it, and let me know any feedback.
I love it. And just for folks listening in, it is 62 pages of absolute goodness, packed with great facts and stats, and as Josh mentioned, case studies and whatnot. Other panelists here, what resources are you sharing with your teams to ensure they're meeting these goals? Chip, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. I'm going to go back real quick to the people side of it real quick. We are doing a lot to integrate personalized training and development for individuals to help cater all of our training deployment to them as an individual. So we have put software in place, for example, that tells them real time what some of their scores and metrics are. And then it doesn't just give feedback on that. What we really work on is coaching them as individuals. So it recommends training based on their specific scores. So that's been extremely helpful. That also goes back to when they take a live person class or get coached by their leader. It is giving us feedback on how effective those coaches and trainers are at coaching to that specific trait or behavior. So as we really hone in on driving that person-to-person interaction behind the technology, there's a lot of that. The other piece that we're doing is really, as we talked about, removing friction and making seamless interactions for the customer. We're also trying to do the same thing for our associates. So we are leading more and more from the standpoint of how do we get our associate to tell us what resources they need and what we need to invest in, and really letting them take a lot of the lead. And we've seen a huge return on that ultimately results in our customer having a better experience. I think the more that we're able to drive that outstanding customer or associate experience, the more our customer is going to be rewarded for it. So that's really where we're deploying the majority of our resources, is around training, development of individual agents, and trying to give them all the resources they need to really deliver that outstanding customer experience that focuses on convenience and value.
Great. Yes. Thanks, Chip. David, resources you're sharing with Dell, with your team?
Yeah, I largely echo what Chip is saying there. We're absolutely doing each one of those same initiatives, right? Again, because we have full visibility to the conversation by our frontline representative, and then we have full visibility to how the customers respond to those conversations. That allows us to really focus in and talk with each agent or representative about specific opportunity areas. Do they need to improve their conversational ability? Do they need to improve their empathy? Do they need to improve their resolution ability? Are they a great example that we want other members in the team to learn from? And and then we, of course, can leverage the same kind of insights from a technology perspective on after they've had their training, after they've had their coaching, after they've had some practice with the new behaviors that we're looking to help them enable, right? Then we can see whether we see actually a change in the tone, the tenor of those conversations. And I think those are they're very kind of productive and very positive, right? That it's not a criticism, it's a help in terms of delivering the kind of experience that we're looking for.
That's great. Thank you, David. Wow, our time has absolutely flown by so fast, and we had a little bit more that we're not going to get to cover, but this is very, very rich, and really appreciate the panelists joining us today. I'm actually going to hand back over to Jazz at the Insight Group to talk to us about what's next.
Thank you so much, Mari, and thank you to our audience for joining us today for the webinar, The Future of Customer Service. And of course, a big thank you to Josh, Reginald, Chip, and David for sharing your insights. I thought there were some great insights shared. Thank you, guys. I thought there were some great insights shared throughout, and I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. As mentioned, we will be sending all the recordings of this webinar, should you wish to share it with your colleagues or listen back. I think it's safe to say that, yes, customer service has changed. Connected customers now demand a personalized experience, real-time engagement, and a seamless service, meaning the race is on to exceed customer expectations and retain customers for the future. If you are interested in hearing more strategies to win and retain customers, we'll be discussing this and more at the Customer Service Summit West in San Diego on June 3rd and 4th this year. Check the chat box for a link to the brochure. We'll also be sending through details for this and Conversocial's definitive guide to customer service with the webinar recordings, so keep an eye out for an email from me, Jasmine Keys. Enjoy the report. I hope you can join us in San Diego. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh. We'll see you in June, everybody.
See you in June.